All right. Well, normally Julie says David, which you introduced the presenter. But tonight I am Julie. So tonight's program is Everglade, and Les Hansen is going to lead that program on a very, very popular pattern for collectors these days. And so I'm going to go ahead and mute. So, Les, you're going to need to unmute and take it away.
Okay, thank you, David. Yeah, the topic, we had some switches. The topic tonight is Everglade. It's a line produced by Cambridge for a long period of time, and it is very popular. It's also, because it's an extensive line, it's actually a difficult line to cover in a short period of time. So I'm going to try my best here to not go too long. Everglade, and it is Everglade without the S on the end. I've been as guilty as anybody to often referring to the line as Everglades. But if you go to the Miami Valley album, you put in Everglades, you get nothing. There's not an S on the end. And an Everglade is what the national park, the Everglades, demonstrates. You know, it's a wetland. And but Cambridge made it as Everglade without reference to the national park with the S on the end. It was first introduced in 1929, just a few pieces. A lot of the early pieces were council sets, council bowls and candlesticks. I don't collect a lot of those because they take a lot of space if you are an avid collector, but I'm hoping we'll see some of those tonight. There were a number of bowls, different numbered lines of bowls within the Everglade line, and candlesticks as well. For myself, I collect opaque Everglade. That's what I emphasize in my collection. I've got a few other pieces here I'll show that aren't opaque, but by and large, that's the examples I'll show tonight are opaque pieces. Most of the line, the early line, was introduced in 1931. Now, as far as the earliest pieces, again, they were console sets. There was one vase introduced way back in 1929, and that's this really large vase, the 12-incher. And I refer to it as the multi-floral because there's different types of florals designs on this vase. You can see the shape. It's squarish on top and throughout. Quite beautiful. This particular decoration has a satin finish except for the flowers themselves. They're not satin finished. Some of the Cambridge materials referred to that as buffed. The flowers are buffed. Well, of course, they didn't buff off the satin finish. That is areas that were covered with wax so that the acid would not eat into the glass to create the satin finish. Now, this vase, it makes me wonder because it's got a number quite different in the series of all the other blank numbers that followed for the vases. And often with Cambridge, they did buy molds from other companies, especially from France, actually. So this is one I'm wondering if this might have been one of those molds that was purchased elsewhere. On the other hand, it could have been made by Cambridge, the mold makers, to launch this line along with some console sets. Now, the line comes in the major transparent colors over the years. Well, crystal, which is colorless, of course, but also amber, willow blue, and moonlight. Often we're a little bit timid, it seems like, declaring things moonlight, but Cambridge made much more moonlight than willow blue in terms of length of time, at the very least, based on the price list that we have. So a lot of the light blue transparent Everglade is probably moonlight, but there is willow blue as well. Light emerald, very popular with collectors, forest green, and gold crystal. There is some carmine, not a lot. Maybe we'll see some tonight. And the carmine is really treasured and prized. Boy, the carmine Everglade is gorgeous. And then there were single items. And we don't know why just single items in topaz, royal blue, and bluebell. For the opaques, which I collect, there's ebony, crown Tuscan, milk, and that violet color that they made right at the end, near the end of the company. So Everglade was made from 1929 nearly to the end of the company in the late 50s. So a 30-year period of time nearly that it was made. Another color combination that they made it in, it was pink opalescent, and I'll show some examples of that in a minute, which is a semi-transparent glass. I'll say right up front now, I'm just going to refer to Everglade. Some, if you read the crystal ball, have put some emphasis that it was also at times called the leaf line. Makes sense because there's a lot of leaves in a lot of these patterns. Sometimes in the catalogs, it was referred to as springtime. Some people say or believe that the springtime is when it has an all-over satin finish. I'm not so sure about that based on the price list and the original materials that I've seen from the factory. And LaFleur, if they have that buffed area for the flowers on a satin finish. And again, I'm not so sure about that. I don't think the company was consistent in the naming of those different variations of the Everglade line. And then finally, at the very end of the years of Cambridge production, when we get into the mid to late 40s, they introduced Arcadia, and that line included items from the Everglade line plus some more. So we'll go on then, proceed with some other items from the Everglade line. Another vase that came out early was this example here. I have it here in Crown Tuscan. It is a later version of this particular blank. You can see that the top is round earlier, and I don't have an example. The sides here went straight up and were not flared out. I refer to all of these just have numbers. They don't have names. I refer to this one as straw flower. Collectors come up with coin names for things. But this is another one that the number for this particular vase doesn't fit all the other vases. And I believe, David, you surfaced an example from France that you've written about in the crystal ball, that there are items this identical shape, except with the straight up sides here on top with France on the bottom. So this is there's a very good chance that this was a mold acquired by Cambridge from a factory in France. Another example then that fits that category is this. We call this the globe vase, and it is a bit different in the form because the flowers tend to be intaglio into the glass rather than out, and it's very different here on this top. It's almost like a globe for a light fixture. And I have one of these in a jade type color that's got France stamped on the underside. So this is another example probably where Cambridge purchased a mold from another company, started producing glass, gave it its own line number, and this is violet. So it was in the line from about 1931 until something like at least 57 or something like that. And based on these early molds, that they maybe purchased, they developed other vases and other items for the line. And we'll proceed with those now. One of the real popular items in the line are the candlesticks. This one is ebony. It's the one light candlestick. This stick and the two light version in Carmen are just fantastic and prized by collectors. Ebony is not common and has a beautiful shine to it. There's a lot of intricate detail. These must have been very difficult to get out of the molds without damage. And you have to inspect them carefully if you're buying, because it's often the case that these can be, the leaves could be chipped on the pointy ends and repaired. So another interesting thing, this candlestick was finished 3 different ways, and was given 3 different numbers by the Cambridge factory. So this one, the leaves are very spread out. That was one way that this candlestick was sold. Another way, and this example is violet, that they're just partially spread out. And again, with these different variations, we're going to talk about different ones this evening. You know, the glass was, tools were used to manipulate the glass when it was still warm, hot, but was still pliable enough that they could manipulate the glass. So it must have been quite a process to get these consistent from one item that they produced to another. So again, you can see these leaves are spread partially outward. And there was yet a third number assigned to this one. This is that pink opalescent color, and you can see that they're almost straight up. Same mold, same candlestick, but 3 different variations of this candlestick based on how much the leaves are spread out. Here's the 2-light version. Again, my gosh, the detail on this candlestick and all those leaves sticking out, it must have been very difficult to have this made consistently and come out of a mold, you know, in good shape. It wouldn't surprise me if a piece like this, that there were a lot of rejections and then the glass was used as cullet and reused for another batch, because the intricacy is just amazing on it. Another thing that they made and sold with those candlesticks was this insert. And it fits very easily into any of these candlesticks, either the 1 light or the 2 light. Usually they're in crystal, but they have surfaced in color. I know in particular royal blue. I don't recall other colors. Maybe we'll see some tonight. Most of the time they're crystal. It's kind of a calla lily shape to that insert to turn the candlestick into a vase. So next, we're going to talk about some of the other shapes to the vases. This, again, it has a number, but a lot of us the collectors call this the sunflower vase. And this was the original version. You can see it's rectangular on top, fairly bulbous and equal in diameter otherwise. They did change the form of most of these vases on the top. So this is the same blank number, same mold, with the sunflower decoration. This one is in violet, but you see the top is pretty much round. There are some indentations, but it's more round compared to the rectangular shape to the top on the original version. Now, these will pop up in the transparent colors in both variations of the tops. Another example would be this daffodil vase. Again, you can see it's rectangular on top. Beautiful daffodil decoration with the satin finish and then the buffed flowers. It really pops and looks beautiful. Now that same vase, got to reach here, folks, was made in milk glass in 1953 and 1954. And again, you can see the difference on the top. They changed the top so it's more round in appearance in comparison to that rectangular shape. So because milk glass and violet were made late, they all have the rounder top to these vases. And the ebony, I believe all of that was made early. So they have the rectangular tops, and then the transparent colors fall, or they come out in both versions. Another vase is, I believe this is also a daffodil, but it's much taller. Has the rectangular shape on top. And moving up in size, we've got the 12-inch tulip, and this is a monumental piece of glass. the original version. I think very popular among collectors. It's really pretty in all the colors. It's really beautiful in moonlight blue. It's beautiful in light emerald. A very popular vase, and I think, of course, very utilitarian as well. Now, this one was changed too in its shape, and this one is in Crown Tuscan. The same design as far as the tulip throughout, but it's an inch and a half shorter, and the top has been flared out. So it's a lot larger diameter on top than on the original version we see here in the ebony. Yet another vase that was made. This is violet. It's pretty hard to find in violet, but it's not nearly as hard to find in the transparent colors. And really a wonderful example of the Everglade lines, because you got the leaves up here on top, got the leaves on the bottom, a jagged edge, and in this transparent color, all that design really shows through the vase. And again, it would be very functional to use as a vase. Moving on then, there were some oval shaped balls. This is one that's got the tulip design around the bottom and on the base, not on the top. So to display it, it actually displays better at an angle or upside down, because that way you can really see the design. Another example of an oval bowl that they made is this example in violet. Now this is actually, and you can see the leaves, this is actually a variation of the original mold that was in the Arcadia line that was introduced in the 1940s. And there is some difference. This has a flat oval foot on the bottom, whereas the original version that was in the Everglade line had the leaves on the bottom that mimicked exactly what was around the top here. So perhaps we'll see one of these in perhaps those transparent colors. Another bowl that they made, and this one is in Crown Tuscan. These get to be big and bulky. This is the tulip vase. It matches the 12-inch vase that I showed earlier. So it's the same type of design. And this bowl was finished many different ways. It was a flip bowl, it was a tray, different ways of flattening the top. So they did that a lot. Cambridge did that often with a single mold. They'd use finishing tools to change the shape of the resulting product. I have one more variation of that same one to show you just that. This one's ebony. Again, it's from the same mold as that Crown Tuscan bowl, but you can see this is largely flattened out, but then flared up on top. Now, an earlier version of this bowl was smooth around the edges. It didn't have these jagged edges, but they moved to the jagged edges at some point in time for the production. Again, this can be found in just a completely flat platter, and I've actually got an example in milk glass in my collection. So different ways of finishing those products. Getting close to the end here. I have another example. This was a late entry to the Everglades line. It was actually usually a cheese stand that went with a a flat platter in the Everglade line. And they had many different finishes that they did with that cheese compote. I know of 5 different versions of the finishing that they did. This one, it kind of has a ripple and is upright. Some are more flattened out. Some are upright. Some, there's a rose bowl where they come nearly together, the edges on the top. So this is that pink opalescent. Got 2 more examples of that. Here's another example, a nappy, a 2-handled nappy. Any guesses which mold this came from? It's the sugar bowl. from the Everglade line, and they use finishing tools to flatten it out and create a two-handled nappy. Now with that tip, and you guess what this piece is originally? It's a one-handled nappy. If the other was a sugar, this is the creamer. Yep. So they just flattened it out to come up with a one-handled nappy. Now, this pink opalescent has often been referred to as experimental, but I'm among the group that believes there's just too much of it to be truly experimental. So I think the current thought is that the company distributed this out to its vendors to give it a whirl. It doesn't appear in any price list, and they just didn't get uptake on it. But they made enough of it to get it out to many of their sales reps across the country to give it a whirl to see how it might sell. Then I've got a piece here, and I said that there were some items that were single items. This is the mug, the beer mug, it says in the catalog, in topaz. Why this happened to be made in topaz, we do not know. Actually, I think this pops up most often in milk glass from 1953 and 54. Ironically, why they happen to make a lot of them in milk glass, I don't know. If you're going to drink beer, I don't know that you'd want to drink it out of a milk glass mug, but it comes in all the transparent colors, and it shows the leaf design of Everglade very nicely on it. Again, Arcadia was introduced in 1943. That line was only crystal. And starting, at 43, we were well into World War II. Pearl Harbor was bombed, I believe, in 41. So we were busy at war in 1943. Materials for color became more difficult to acquire, and perhaps taste also changed to crystal. So the Arcadia line, which used items from the Everglade line, including the 1 and 2 light candlesticks that I showed, were made in crystal as part of the Arcadia line. And then we don't know at all why, but when they introduced violet during that reopen period in the mid to late 50s, they made violet in some of the Arcadia line as well. So I showed you one piece of that, and maybe we'll see more here tonight, Arcadia, which is closely related to the Everglade line. Now, reading up for this, I did one interesting thing, Arcadia. Where did that word come from? The line was originally called Sequoia when the patents were introduced. But when the line was actually introduced to the public in 1943, it was called Arcadia. Well, it turned out that the conference that Churchill and FDR had at the White House after the bombing of World War II had the code name Arcadia. So A.J. Bennett, was, and his descendants were big, originally from England. So the fact that Churchill was involved might have said, hey, let's change that name to Arcadia. Just a thought, no firm evidence on that. So David, that's what I got. It was a quickie review on Everglade. So I don't know if there's any quick questions. I'm anxious to see what other people have.
Les, I've got a question. I've got the Buffalo Bowl. Is that considered part of Arcadia or Everglade line or not?
Yeah, Linda, thank you for bringing that up. I had intended to cover it and I forgot. Yes, strangely, very strangely, the Buffalo Hunt Bowl scene, that bowl is part of the Everglade line. And it was a knockoff of the Remington, painting. Why they included that as part of the Everglade, because when you think of Buffalo Hunt, I don't think you think of Everglade.
No,
but it was not popular, unfortunately. So
man, I've got one piece in Frosted Moonlight, but God, I love that thing.
It's gorgeous.
It's a neat piece.
It takes a lot of room to display, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's on top of a dresser with a big flower frog.
Thanks for asking that, Linda.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Les before we go to show and tell? All right. Well, thank you, Les. Everglade is a huge line, and it's hard to believe that it was from the early 1930s, and they just kept those molds and all the way through, because a lot of the molds during the war were scrapped. So, but clearly the Everglade line survived, and I know the opalescent pieces. I think those were likely introduced to compete with the opalescent glass by Duncan and Miller. They were doing a lot of opalescent glass, and so was Fostoria. I think any company was trying to match what was popular in the other companies. So that may have been the reasons they played around with that particular pink opalescent, because you don't really think of opalescent glass when you think of Cambridge glass. First on deck this evening is going to be Greg Vass, and then Scott and Kathy will be on deck. So remember, you're going to need to unmute yourself when you present. Greg, are you ready?
I am. I just had to find that magic button.
Well, glad you found it.
Found it. Well, I want to start off with, I like the daffodil flower and pattern. And this is something David might remember. This is a willow blue daffodil vase. And for those of you not really familiar with what happened, I guess, after Cambridge closed, Fenton got a hold of the mold, I guess, and adjusted it. And they came out with a very beautiful, I think, version of this vase later on that lived on. And this is a silver crest, I believe, and has a nice, very ruffly top to it. This comes in a whole lot of colors, you'll find it. They made a lot of those. So, but I'm very, very happy with my willow blue or moonlight version.
Yeah, it's more likely to be moonlight, I think, with that top. Yeah.
Got the 12-inch oval bowl in forest green.
Thanks for showing that, Greg, because that's got that ruffle, the leaf bottom that my violet one did not have.
Okay.
So this is the original version.
And a pair of 2 light candlesticks. And I really agree, Les, with what you said. How they got this out of the mold with all this stuff going on, it's amazing. It's amazing that any of it survived to be sold after it came out of the mold. Now we're kind of down to 2 of my favorite pieces. I really like this. It's a 13-inch. It's got swans and lily pads and cattails. And one of the really cool things, of course, is the feet there. The 3 feet on the bottom look like 3 lily pads. That's one of my favorite items of my collection.
And again, on that one, there's so many variations. Is flip bowls, platters, cup edges. They use that same mold for many different designs, and that was obviously a popular seller.
Nice. And then something I've been trying to find a few more of. This is the sherbet. It's I looked in the catalogs a little while ago, and this was in the 1934 catalog as a sherbet. And they had 2 other items. They had a 6-inch comport and a 7-inch comport. And kind of the differences, they look very same, except the comports, when you get up to near the top, it loses the leaf detail, and it's just becomes sort of a circular top without the leaf detail. By 1940, this was out of the line, and there was a 6-inch comport left on the line. That's what I have.
Well, Greg, you always have wonderful glass to share, and I'm envious of your 2 Light forest green candlesticks. But now that I'm starting to work on our good friend over in the dealer in the DC area, so
Oh, good.
yeah, she does venture into Ohio every once in a while, so I get to look at the beautiful things that she brings from the DC area. So thanks again for sharing. Great glass.
Yeah.
Next up is Scott and Kathy, and Mary and Jeff, you'll be on deck.
Okay, well, folks, I'll start out with an apology. My computer is trying to die on me, so it sounds like we're harming a chihuahua, but we're not. So if you hear that high-pitched yip, I swear to God, no animals were hurt. Okay, I'm gonna have to, oh dear, there we go, maybe. This is what they call the 1250 vase. It is with the round mouth. It's in crystal, but and again, by the website, they call it pearl mist. And this is considered number 2 pearl mist because it's all over, as compared to the 1250 vase with the square mouth or rectangular. And it's considered finish number 2 because it is buffed, as Les said. And then the only other thing we have to show, just so you know, Les doesn't have the only one in violet. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Maybe Les, you can share on this, but I think that the crystal found in the buffed or highlighted version is probably the hardest color to find with the highlights. I have not seen a lot of crystal highlighted like that. Usually it's the light emerald or the ebony.
No, I think you're right. It's not as common in crystal. For whatever reason, it's always what's sold, of course.
Right. Wait, Scott and Kathy, thank you very much for sharing those. Mary and Jeff, you're up next, and Gwinnell, you'll be on deck this evening.
Well, not to be left out.
They're everywhere.
Yeah. We also have this in blue satin, and we've got a black satin one, and I couldn't put my hands on it. But the black has definitely got a different neck to it, and it looks, but it wasn't marked France, as we thought. Maybe, it looks so different that we thought maybe that's what it was. But
Mary,
it wasn't.
Is it royal blue satin?
Yes.
Yep. That's the only piece of Everglade, I believe, that was made in royal blue. And I believe they're all satin finished.
Yeah, that's. I'm not gonna get off enough. But yeah, I couldn't put my fingers on it today or recently. This is the little 1 Light candlestick, and I just thought that was such a neat shape. And then yeah, console sets, they do take up an awful lot of room, but but they are fun to have. So here's the one of the blue candlestick. And then we have this pair that goes with the bowl. So I think I can see that very well. And then, we've got the tulip, the crystal tulip bowl with the tulip bottom that we found it in a shop, and it was marked Mikasa. I think they had like $10 price on it. So it's like, yeah. Well, but I know Mikasa did make one with tulips on it, but it wasn't that one. And then it's kind of fun. We like to line things up on the buffet. So you hold this one up and so we got the two versions of the satin
And the plain.
in the transparent green. Get it up here a little bit closer. And then these two, it's kind of fun to display them. So you have the daffodils with the transparent and the satin. And we put those on the buffet together with that. I don't have we do have the only other, the green. And we have it in milk glass, but that's in a different box and I couldn't get to it. But they round out the buffet nicely, put them at either end. So, oh, and then the last thing I think we had was the little nappy, the little satin 3-footed nappy. That's what we got.
So Les, when they satinized the light emerald, was that jade?
Yes, exactly. They had different names for the satin finishes. So that was jade. Yep.
Well, thank you, Mary. The beautiful examples of the daffodil vase. I'm not sure if I had seen the daffodil vase in light emerald before. I try to keep track of things mentally. Maybe it's age, but I'm not remembering that one before. So that's a wonderful piece. It's beautiful.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, we like it.
Yes, I think it's the only one we've ever come across.
Yeah, whether it's satin, and you've got two of them, satin and
Yeah.
Glossy. So that's wonderful. And thank you again for sharing. Those are beautiful.
Oh,
Thank
sure.
you.
Gwinnell, you're on deck.
Okay.
And then next will be Jack.
All right. I've got the crystal salad plate, which I guess maybe is Arcadia, with it being crystal.
No, that's Everglade.
Everglade.
They
Okay.
made it heavily in crystal and in moonlight.
Okay. And then I've got the willow, possibly moonlight in the cream and sugar.
And again, those would be the pieces they flattened out for the opalescent ones that I showed.
Right. I didn't realize that, but that's nice. And then I've got a big piece, which is kind of hard to see the color, but I think it's willow. It's the big tulip plate from your bowl. And it is blue. It's not as sparkly as the moonlight, so I'm thinking it's willow. Can you see the tulips?
Yes, we can.
But it is big. And it does take up a lot of space. But that's what we've got. I had to dig to find them, but I got them.
That's right, Gwinnell. A true Everglade collector needs to be prepared for some very large bowls, especially the buffalo bowls and the swan bowls and the tulip bowls. They are massive. Thank you for sharing tonight. Jack, you're up, and Tim, you'll be on deck.
Okay, thank you, David. Since we were talking about I'm glad you guys brought up about the Buffalo Hunt Scene Bowl because there were two of them. And this is one of them. This is Peach Blow. And the second one was, instead of being kind of flared down, was more cupped up. And when these were introduced, they weren't actually introduced part of the Everglade line. They were just an independent piece in the 27-29 catalog. And then they morphed them into the Everglade line. In fact, in the 40 catalog, they actually changed the number and gave it an Everglade different number, which is kind of interesting. This is the early one because obviously being Peach Blow, they weren't making this Everglade and Peach Blow. So, but anyway, it's a cool piece. So, I'll get to that later, but I wanted to to talk about, because Mary showed this candlestick, and I think they are really cool candlesticks. It's you can see that they just cut off the top and highly polished it. But what it is almost, and I say almost, this single candlestick that's been cut off. And they must have just altered the mold a little bit because there's some subtle differences to this one to this one other than just cutting it off. But it's an interesting candlestick.
They probably
And
used a different
most-
plunger, Jack.
Pardon?
They probably used a different plunger.
Well, they changed
went into
certain
the
things in
mold.
the mold, like it's on this piece right here. It's you
Oh.
can see it's all thing, where on the other candlestick
Okay.
it's not. They took some of the detail off and they adjusted. This one's actually cupped, and this one is actually flatter a little bit. So anyway, just little bits there. Since we're showing daffodil vases, I've got a forest green one here, which most of the Everglade that we have, we like in the forest green. So I just think it's a beautiful color that they did. And we're going to show the #1 bowl in forest green. This bowl is one of those that we were talking about, similar to the candlestick. It is very difficult. We have been looking at this for years and we just cannot figure out how they made this. I would really like to see the mold if we had this, which we do not, because the way the leaves come out, it's just, we don't know how what they were doing here, but this had to be very difficult. They only made this for a very short time. It was introduced around 1933, and it was gone shortly thereafter, maybe about a year and a half.
Actually,
because
Jack,
they
it was made
adjusted
it was made in violet, so they still kept the mold.
with the feet on
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
Because what
one
they
in the
did,
museum.
then they changed. David, you're shaking your head.
They changed that mold and took those 4 leaves that stick
Put the
out off
feet off.
and just
And-
left the leaves on the
Right, and they
side.
changed it to the number 61 bowl
Yeah,
in the
okay.
35 catalog. So this was
Okay.
gone by that. So this was just very, very difficult to find. You can find it in some of the colors, but a lot of times these feet would break off. I remember back, maybe 2010, 2012, we had a Carmen one consigned to the auction. And when it came, it was delivered. The feet were broken off in delivery, and we were all just sick. So anyway,
Thanks for showing that, Jack.
What's that?
It's a spectacular piece. I
Mhm.
think it's popped up in Carmen, and you can imagine in Carmen as well. What do you think? Maybe a 6-piece mold? Again,
We've been
it had to
studying
be a
it for years.
multi-mold.
Everybody has, and it's just who knows? Your guess is as good as anybody's. I don't know if you know what the original mold might have come out with. Did they attach some of these separately? I don't think so, but people have suggested that. I don't know. It's difficult, whatever. So
That's what I was going to ask, but it had been made in different pieces.
Not likely.
yeah, I don't know.
These molds,
Whatever it was,
they could
didn't
be
ex-
3-part, they could be 4-part, they could be 6-part. So they just open the mold up, so it could come out. So it might have been a very complex mold. It would have had to have been.
Mhm.
But it must have been trouble though, because again, they only made it for about a year or 2 tops before they changed it. So
They took off the bottom leaves mostly, Jack, is that right?
yeah, and when they change it, you can see the ones, and there's a couple examples in the museum in Moonlight, but it's just much plainer then, and it was probably a lot easier to get out of. So Greg showed the forest green candlesticks, which we have a pair of them too. And But we have the vases in there. They put these vase inserts on there. Les showed a crystal one. And a lot of people do prefer the crystal vases on the colored bottom just because it's maybe a little, David shaking his head, heck no, but maybe it's a little contrast. But so anyway, this is pretty cool. We only have two of the vases, but we have a pair of the candlesticks because they also did that. Put that in the. Put this one in there. They put it in the single candlestick and also made a flower holder too as well. So very beautiful. Really cool what they were doing there. So, and that's it. Thank you.
Well, Jack, I noticed that the vase insert that you have is different than the vase insert that Les showed. The one that Les had is the one I have seen a lot more of. They kind of manipulate the top of the vase to look more like the Jack in the pulpit, where yours to me looks like almost exactly the way it came out of the mold. It's very, it doesn't flare hardly at all, and it's just almost perfectly round around the top. Les, if you want to grab,
yeah, let's show yours. Let's see what the difference looking at.
It's crimped almost.
Yeah,
oh, I see.
It's
yeah.
ruffled on the edges.
Yeah, where mine is not. Mine's perfectly so. Were they making both of those at the same time? Is that ruffled one later or earlier?
I think probably the same time. It's just a finishing tool.
Just a variation. Mm-hmm.
But I'll take the forest green ones if you want to swap.
Yeah, those are outstanding. And over the years, I've sold a little bit of glass, and I have sold a pair of the forest green inserts, but I'm pretty sure that they were of the version that Les had. They weren't the round ones like Jack had. They were the crimped ones around the edge, which sometimes you ask yourself, what were you thinking? But oh well. And I really do think Jack mentioned this. I have seen most of the time the colored inserts in the crystal candlesticks. I don't know exactly why. Obviously, I've had a pair of cobalt blue ones, and they did not make cobalt blue leaf candlesticks. But as collectors, we like to marry up Beaubouchers and vases and arms and all that kind of stuff to just make it as rare as possible. So, Jack, thank you for sharing that. Those are absolutely wonderful pieces. Tim, you are on deck, and I will have a couple items to share at the end.
Well, I got on late tonight, so can you hear me, David?
Loud and clear. And I see you got your assistant right there.
Yes, it's been a while since I've had the computer out. So tonight I had to run my Amish copper back home, so I didn't get back in here on time. So I'm going to turn my camera around here so we can, we got to get it going right there. And wait a minute. It's turned. Huh? It's turned. Well, they have to, can you see
Perfectly. Perfectly.
Okay. Light emerald satin with the gold trim on it. And this one is it's with the different top. Is that too close?
That's a little close.
Well, the problem that's happening here, I can't see what the screen's doing. So I will. Here is ebony with ebony highlights. Mm-hmm. And I think that Nancy told me that one was shown tonight, but she wasn't sure which one, so I grabbed them both out of here earlier. That is just ebony with a label, which is kind of cool. And this one is
Tim, actually, ebony is a sandblasting treatment, so that's just a satin finish.
okay. And you see that one full blown.
Yeah, you gotta go a little further away. There you go.
That is light. What'd you call it, jade?
Yeah, I don't know. Les, what do you think?
Well, that all gets confusing because I tend to think when it was satin all over, that's when they had those other color names.
Uh-huh.
And again, things just aren't very consistent in the price list that Cambridge put out. So generally we say satin finished with the highlights
There
or
we go.
appearance. Yeah.
That's what that one is.
That's a monumental piece. It's big.
Thank you. And then some of you will probably recognize this one and you'll know where it came from. There we go. That is the light satin finish on the light emerald and with ormolu. And it's a beautiful piece. We've probably all seen it. And last but not least, can you hold that, Cooper, out there? Carmen Everglade bowl. But when Welker saw that at one of the show and tells, when he walked in the door, he started making a beeline over there and he goes, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh." He says the museum has one, but I've never known there ever to be another one. So now there's two. So we're pretty proud of that. That's all I've got. The other stuff I got.
Carmen, again, the color Carmen costs usually about 50% more than all the other colors. And it's one of the reasons there's less of it out there, because it was more expensive to make. Tim, you didn't show your violet tulip vase.
I've got it, but it's hard to get to.
Oh, I know how that goes. Yeah.
There's a lot of pieces I would love to show tonight, but we gotta hold them back.
Tim has an amazing Everglade collection. He's nice enough to give us a little sampling of a portion of it. So thank you, Tim, for coming in from outside, working in your garage, I'm sure, tonight to join us on Zoom and Tell.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to show glass this evening before I finish us off?
I got one, David.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. This is the only piece I have. 6-inch vase with the sunflowers on it, I believe, as Les would say.
Mm-hmm.
Moonlight, I believe.
Right.
That's the only piece I have. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, that's a great example. That is not an easy vase to find. And for people who are not Everglade collectors, crystal Everglade you can find. A lot of that was made over the years, but to put together a nice grouping of colored Everglade takes a bit of work and due diligence and some help from fellow collectors, because you just don't go out antiquing on a weekend and grab 3 or 4 pieces of colored Everglade very easily. I'm going to share a couple pieces. The first piece is Tim, thank you for letting me use your Moonlight beer stein tonight to as my part of my show and tell. Les is correct. The milk beer steins are probably 20 to 1 or 50 to 1 in comparison to crystal, Moonlight. Of course, he had a topaz one that I don't know that I've seen another one. And there is a pink one in the museum as well, which is the only pink beer stein I've ever seen. A few of these came up on eBay a couple months ago, and I couldn't help myself. But I believe they were the only Moonlight ones I had seen at that time. And they are as common as the milk glass ones are. Even the crystal ones are extremely hard to find. And that goes for the tumblers that they made in Everglade. I've seen those in both Moonlight and I believe those are Everglade. They might be Arcadia, but I've seen those footed tumblers in Moonlight, and they're just really, really difficult to find. So I was excited, and anybody that finds a beer stein should be happy to find one. Oops, this is another piece. that is actually crystal. It doesn't look crystal in the picture. This is the sunflower vase with the hexagonal top. And when you see this, you just think, oh, this is that multicolored vase that it just went wild with. But there really is some artistry there. The sunflower is orange. As you go around, every sunflower is orange. It's not perfectly painted inside the lines. The sky is blue up here at the top, and the ground down here is where all the green is located. So this is an enamel spray on decorate. I'm not sure, but there's a swan in the museum that has this same decoration. And I believe I've seen 2 or 3 of these vases over the years. And this is one of my favorites. The bottom is perfectly clear. You can see straight through. There's no enamel work on the bottom.
David, I have a pair of council bowls, but there was no way I was going to take them out of the cases.
You're right. I remember those.
Those
are beautiful.
Flashing, the enamel flashing.
Yeah, those are absolutely
Why
stunning.
they didn't make more of that, I don't know, because it is gorgeous.
Les, the vase that you held up in Crown Tusk at the beginning, that particular vase has a stamp of Montjoy on the bottom of it, which is a French company in the late 1800s. And I mean, it doesn't look, it has a different shape to the vase.
It's this blank you're talking about.
It's that blank, and it's
except straight on the top.
Yeah, instead of flaring out, it's round, but it comes straight up. So Cambridge definitely put the hexagon top on it, like this one. This one would have been on that one. Oh no, that vase early on is just round. You're right.
It's ebony, just round. Yeah,
just round. You're correct. So I think if you remember back when Debbie and Randy Coe were our convention speakers, Randy mentioned that there was a glass symposium in France where all the major glass companies of the world went over there. And that was Randy's tie-in to how Cambridge saw possibly the Lalique designs in France. And those were inspired the designers from Cambridge that attended the symposium to come back and introduce that type of Lalique Everglade line that they introduced in the early 1930s, or maybe even the late 1920s. But clearly the small globe vase is clearly marked France. And I don't think we just maybe changed the neck at the top just a little bit. And the vase you just held up is almost identical to the one that was in France. So my guess is Cambridge may have purchased those molds and then just expanded the line as time went along, because it must have been rather popular with the American public.
And David, the other example of that is the 10-inch swan has popped up with France stamped on the bottom.
Wow, really?
More than one. So more than likely, we don't know for sure, that 10-inch, the swan line started as the 10-inch in a mold from France. And then other sizes were made by Cambridge mold makers.
Well, the swans did start around that time.
Yeah.
Early 1930s when.
Yeah.
So that's very, very likely.
And of course, consolidated glass, their Martel line, the vases that we think so often of being consolidated, they were all inspired by that Paris show as well.
Yes. Wow. They are quite spectacular as well. Are there any other anyone else that wants to share tonight before we wrap up? Okay, so this is the time where Julie would say, David, why don't you round out the meeting? So I'll do that now. Linda Roberts is on tonight's meeting, and she is going to be leading a program next month on vanity boxes, trays, puff boxes. Linda did a wonderful program about 6 months ago on perfume bottles and atomizers, and she's just going to finish up the remainder of that with vanity trays, puff boxes, pomades. So a lot of the things that the community line from the 1920s, I think 1920s, maybe 19 teens, and the different opaque colors would be part of that. So look in your cases and check that out, and be ready to share some of your wonderful items with us after Linda's program
And
next month.
David, I would say I do not have the depth of those pieces as I do in the perfumed. So please bring yours to share. I mean, obviously I have some, but not like I did on the perfumes.
Well, we appreciate you helping us and finishing out that program. And I'm sure our regular attendees will step up and bring some wonderful items to share after that program. All right, guys, anything else for the good of the order this evening? Well, Julie hopefully will be back next month and doing her duties, and we'll look forward to a wonderful program with Linda leading the way. And it's been great seeing everyone here this evening. Of course, Les did a fantastic job on a large topic on Everglade and all the surrounding designs and that go along with that. So thank you very much, Les, for helping us out this evening and leading a great program. And of course, as always, thank you to everyone that volunteered to share their beautiful pieces from their collection. So have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you next month.